Hornets continue to look good in the preseason. They beat the Grizzlies 119-94. Brandon Miller, Trey Mann, they're the stories of the night. And then we'll just go with an overall theme of Stangin or Clangin today. Lots of Stangin on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods, and that includes YouTube. Real quickly, I want to tell you about this episode being brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with a $200 you'll get started. I've done that twice. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. There's Doug Branson. You can find him on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3. We're feeling good. The vibes continue to be positive, baby. Hornets, so they beat the Grizzlies. 119. We're giddy. We're delirious. We do not know what to do with ourselves. 119-94, and they really separate late with a nice fourth quarter performance from those guys. Let's just start. This is what we'll do, right? Usually we go Stangin or Clangin, and it's rapid fire. It's in the third segment. Let's cap it all off with the other observations. We have our storylines. Then it's Stangin or Clangin. So let's do an overall theme of Stangin or Clangin today, and then just set up camp on some of our favorite things that we saw last night. Your favorite thing, and pretty much meaning that you call it Stangin. What you got, Doug? Lead us off.
Yeah, before I get to my favorite things, a couple of things. Stangin or Clangin is perfect for the preseason because it's all about it's a lot about individual evaluations of players and less about team evaluation. Once we get into the regular season, we're going to be talking about how the team rebounded and how the team shot, and all those things are more vital to winning, sort of more the team aspects, and I'm sure Lee is paying attention to that now. But I think what a lot of fans are paying attention to in the preseason is individual evaluation. So Stangin or Clangin is perfect for preseason. We're going to keep playing it. Also, we're going to play it until they stop Stangin. Like, Stangin or Clangin's not really a lot of fun when all they've been doing is Clangin for the past couple of years.
We don't really play it at that point.
Yeah. You've
right.
noticed we haven't played it a lot lately. It's because that they've been doing is Clangin. So, yes, when they're Stangin, we're going to play. And also, I want to do a birthday shout-out to my baby. 3 years ago, I got the best inbuilt excuse that a person could ask for. So birthday shout out, and I hope that my baby looks this up many years from now to understand why Dad was so sad for a few years and why suddenly he was happy because the Hornets were Stangin.
Yeah, that last part has to happen. Hopefully, it's just the first part of her life, and then she realizes happy dad in the second part. But hopefully, just as soon as possible. Once she turned 3, Doug, that's when she got happy dad.
It's out of my hands. Unfortunately, if you're watching this someday, baby, unfortunately, it's out of my hands. It's all up to the Hornets. I have no control over it.
All right, so happy birthday. Wow, 3 years. 1, that's crazy. 2, hopefully she can look back on this 5, 10, 15 years from now and realize that a critically acclaimed Locked On Hornets niche basketball podcast gave her a shout-out, and she became famous after that.
Yeah, who liked it one time? Who do we have the banner of? Who liked it one time?
Oh, Shea Serrano.
Shea Serrano.
Yeah, he gave us a comment. He said, yeah, shout out to Walker and Doug on the Locked On Hornets.
That's our critical acclaim. We have critical acclaim. Right. Okay, my favorite moments. One is on defense, and one is on the star of the show last night, Brandon Miller. First on defense, 9:35 in the third quarter. Hornets are on defense. It's a little bit of a mix of bench players and starting players. Multiple efforts, multiple rotations on the strong and the weak side. They forced Desmond Bane to step out of bounds. And listen, they were rotating that basketball. They wanted to find a seam, and the Hornets absolutely would not let them. The bench goes wild, led by Charles Lee, who, honestly, in that moment, he looks like a Duke player. I mean, I know they went to Duke for training camp. He looked like a Duke player, in the squat position, slamming the floor. I wanted to run through a brick wall for him. No, not a brick wall. Nay, an iron wall. No, not an iron wall. I wanted to run through a wall made of 1,000 angry bees for Charles Lee in that moment. One of my favorite moments. Did you notice that defensive rotation?
Yes, but really, I noticed the Charles Lee excitement on the sideline.
Yeah.
Charles, if you really want energy, and Steve Clifford told you that he couldn't do this job anymore because he didn't feel like he had the energy, and then this has been the key word with Charles Lee coming in. You see it on full display in the preseason because he is excited. He's one of us. He's one of us out there, just excited that his team is playing.
One of us.
Yeah, love seeing it. Brandon was good. Do you want to go into the Brandon stuff now?
Yeah,
Because
my
he
favorite
was the lead
moment
story.
from Brandon Miller is that first half he was scorching hot, and the Grizzlies noticed. And so coming out of the second half, they put Marcus Smart went even harder on Brandon Miller, was up in his shirt, getting physical in that way that only Marcus Smart can. And then Brandon Miller gets a screen, gets off Smart, but Edey comes over and they start to double team. And I went, uh-oh, Edey, monster, big, smart, physical. Is Brandon Miller going to turn the ball over? No. Somehow he makes a dribble move that puts both of them on the floor. I mean, they got tripped up like it was angels in the front court. It was amazing, but Brandon got free. Now, he missed the shot. He missed a little mid-range pull-up. But the fact that he was able to just discharge that double team from the Grizzlies was my favorite moment from Brandon Miller.
I love it. I love the reference. Yeah, God's Thumbnail, Angels in the Outfield, fantastic movie. My favorite thing watching Brandon Miller do that is do this off of a performance where he did not shoot the ball well at all the previous time out at the Spectrum Center. This is what we've become accustomed to. If Brandon Miller has an off quarter or an off night, it does not last very long. He does not allow it to last very long. Everybody's going to go through a slump, and we saw that through in last year's rookie performance from Brandon. We saw that especially even at the last portion of the season before he got things turned around. It never lasts too long, man. And that's what I love to see with Brandon. He was the story, just to go through the box score real quickly for him. He was 8 of 13 from the field.
Oh, yeah.
He was 6 of 8 from behind the line, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. He ended up with 22 points and only 1 turnover, Doug. Have you noticed the low turnovers from some of these guys? We commented LaMelo on low turnovers.
Yeah.
We complimented with Brandon Miller. We complimented Trey Mann on also the low turnovers, and that's not necessarily true last night for Trey, but it was when he played this last time out at the Spectrum Center. That's a nice little thing to see. I don't know if there's anything to take away from it, but they're low, and I like keeping it that way.
Well, it was nice for him in particular because everybody else was turning the basketball over last night. It was a big story of the game is that the Hornets probably would have won that thing by 40. No Ja Morant for the Grizzlies. Now no LaMelo for the Hornets. No Josh Green. We'll talk about that in a minute. Both those guys were on kind of rest. Kind of maybe
Micic?
Injury.
Micic with more turnovers.
Well, I mean,
What's
oh my
going
God,
on?
dude. I mean, I want to save it for Stangin or Clangin. He's definitely another Clangin, but yeah. And Miles Bridges had 4 turnovers, but it was just everybody. There was sloppy basketball for a lot of this. And then, as we've seen a couple of times now, the third stringers come in and kind of clean up some of that stuff. So, yeah, I like the low turnovers. I think it might be a function of him not really still not focusing on expanding the playmaking part of his game quite yet. I just think that's going to be sort of a slower evolution of his game.
And they're doing it. Remember, no LaMelo last night. He did not play, and we did. So I wonder the high turnovers with the starting point guard being out. Maybe that's just a natural thing that you would expect to see. And Brandon Miller trying to bring the ball up a little bit more with LaMelo off ball. Now LaMelo's off court. So what is going to happen with Brandon bringing up the basketball? With some of the star performances that we've seen, the offensive big time performances. Those have come with low turnovers from some of the stars. So, I like that.
I know Lee wasn't doing it on purpose because he lives in our trauma now, but he is not responsible for our trauma. But I love that he trots out the lineup where Miles Bridges and Brandon Miller are going to be doing most of the playmaking and play initiation. And it just takes you right back to last season, with LaMelo out. And the team shot the lights out. And so that's why they got this victory. And Brandon Miller was a big part of that. But the offense in general, until you got to some of the second and third stringers when they were playing against second or third stringers, starter on starter, the offense looked as clunky as it did last season. It looked as slow as it did last season. And a lot of that, I think, you lay on the feet of Vasa Micic not playing better than we expected Vasa Micic to play. But Brandon Miller, huge part of that.
He's got to be tired or something. I don't get it. But, I mean, he had some rest after the Olympics. I mean, I still don't want you to throw it right to the other team. I mean, these turnovers have been crazy for him. All right, let's move on. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
Brandon Miller, the head story. What about Trey Mann? Trey Mann again. Is it instead of 6th man of the year, should he just be a starter? We'll talk about that coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time?
Game Time?
That was a little late. Game Time has a new feature called
I've got my voice back. That's what I'm focused on.
That's true. Yeah, don't waste it on Game Time yells. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Plus, I mean, you have a bunch of perks when you go to Game Time. Game Time Picks, it's curation that makes it easier to get and save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and even more than that. They give you all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Then you have seat views, lowest price guarantee, and Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. Locked On NBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
Game time.
More Locked On Hornets ahead. You told us your favorite thing. It's time for my favorite thing from last night. It's more so of a stat. It's more so of a culmination of the first 3 games here. But I was looking up the stat while Trey just continued to hit shots. He was 4 of 4 at the beginning of this game last night. And that involved actually a couple of 3-pointers. So I the preseason stats, they're hard to find. But, I went to the game log. And I'm pretty sure the math is correct on this, but usually when I do math, it's incorrect. Trey Mann is 16 of 22 from 2 in 3 games in the preseason. If you are trying to figure out what percentage that is at home, it's 73% on 2-point shots in the first 3 preseason games. I mean, this is on like decent volume. This isn't where he's taken 4 shots a contest. He's had double-digit field goal attempts in 2 of the 3 preseason games. And this just further shows you that he's getting to his spots. He's shooting the right shots, and he's also making them, right? Like, this is what's happening with Trey Mann. So now the question becomes, okay, the 3-point shot, it might come and go. If he's just going to finish with finger rolls and layups high off the glass and just be a good finisher of the basketball, which is something this team kind of needs as LaMelo grows more and more into a star-level player where that might be just an average to strength of his game. Same thing with Brandon. Doug, that's a skill set that the starting 5 could use. And Josh Green has been good at finishing at the rim, but not on near as much volume, right? Is Trey laughing at us when we say Trey 6th man, because he says, y'all, only bench players can win 6th man of the year. I ain't a bench player. I'm a starter. So y'all can have that 6th man of the year conversation. I want to be the 5th man. I might even want to be the 4th. I want to be a high up on the totem pole offensive option that doesn't come off of the pine. Is that a conversation worth having after what we saw last year and then what we've seen through first 3 preseason games?
Yeah, I think, having that's such an interesting conversation, because typically when you have that conversation, you're having it about a team that's serious about making the playoffs, and you want to have that little strategy piece there. You want that offensive firepower coming off the bench. You want the defense starting out games. So is Lee interested in pursuing that sort of natural path of having those 2 things? You've got Josh Green that locks down the opposing best offensive player to start the game, to slow that player down. And then you have Trey Mann coming off the bench, just getting more minutes than Josh Green at the end of the day, but coming off the bench and in a Tyler Hero-ian role. I think that's still an option worth exploring. But they know what they have in Josh Green, they know what they don't have, and so I think definitely Trey Mann is making that conversation more interesting. And I would also say too, if there's an injury, then I think, to Josh Green, then I think, you're not skipping over Trey Mann at that point. You're not saying, well, we got to leave Trey on the bench because
and they didn't last year.
No, so I think he's solidified that place within the rotation of like, you are going to be a starter when that opportunity comes. But I want to go back to a point you made, which is that he's taking the right shots, because I think some people would look at the box score and they would say, man, he is taking a lot of twos. And people keep telling me that taking all of these 2-point shots is not the best thing to do, that you want to take more threes than twos. And while that might be right for most situations, I do want to take a look at – oh, geez. Sorry, I messed up.
What you got, Nick?
Sorry, no, Nick, get out of here. No, Nick, I got something for you, buddy. You don't want to be there right now.
He just said an illegal screen. It's a moving screen from Nick Richards. What are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big surprise, but I'm gonna get to Nick here in the third segment. But look at this shot chart, hot shot chart by Trey Mann, and you'll notice only one long mid-range shot that was probably a pump off a three, and just needed to make a quick shot. But you've got 4 3-point shots, and then everything else was in the lane, and most of it was in the restricted area. So that's a great shot profile. If you're going to take a lot of 2-point shots in a game, that is a great shot profile.
This was from last night?
That's from last night.
It looks very similar to 2 nights ago, or the second preseason
I'll
game,
look it up.
Because it's very similar. In fact, it's damn near identical. There were like 2 mid-range shots, and every other attempt was from 3-point range or it was close to the basket. This is true from him from last year. This is what I love to see, the fact that you're improving so much as soon as you get to a different team, and also that rolls through the offseason.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
Look.
I just put the shot chart up, the hot shot chart. Look, I did it twice there. I got it. I nailed it.
Nice, you did.
And there are no mid-range shots in this one. You've got 3 misses from beyond the arc, and then everything else is right down the center of that lane. And what's been amazing to watch is the number of dribble moves that he can chain together. Look, I know David doesn't want us to compare him to Iverson. Well, let's do this. Let's compare him to White Chocolate, Jason Williams. He looks Jason Williams like, it looks like some and one-ish when he's out there like doing things to make dudes miss him and get open in an area that is like typically constricted. He's able to get so much space in that area.
That's so much pressure. I'm a fan of Josh Green starting right now. I don't think you can change the plan after 3 preseason games and go into the start of the regular season. I do think that, a lot of times we'll have starter conversations and it's a little overblown because who's in your closing lineup, who eventually plays more minutes. We see these really good basketball players, everybody likes to go to Lou Williams, Jamal Crawford, who are the microwave scorers that come off of the bench and help you out offensively. Trey Mann, I think, even helps you a little bit defensively. We've gone over in his steals time and time again. So, it's not like you'd be giving up a ton there. I do think you're giving up size, and I do like the idea of just being big all over the place. So if you're Josh Green and you carry a 6'5", 200-pound frame with muscle, and then you move to Trey Mann where he's listed at 6'3", like 175. So now you're giving up 2 inches of height and 25 pounds of weight, and not as physical a player as what Josh Green is. I think that's why I like Green with the way that he can complement LaMelo and Brandon. But that is not to say that I do not want to see plenty of LaMelo, Trey, Brandon minutes, and I think Charles Lee is going to give us that, especially with Trey not being a pushover defensively. Like, I think he is somebody that can help you, especially give you some fast break opportunities with the way that he's able to anticipate passing lanes.
And honestly, if you're Trey Mann, wouldn't you want to be in the 6-man role? Like, that's a chance.
Just beat up on twos? Yeah, 100%.
That's a chance at some hardware. Like, if you're 5th man on this starting rotation, like, really, you'd probably be like, I think he'd be the 3rd option, honestly, over Miles Bridges to score and just ask Miles to go and do all the little things. But, like, I think, wouldn't you rather be 6th man and go after that hardware and I think you can be a bigger part of the team as a 6th man, because what I'm saying is, like, and I think you're saying the same thing, Josh Green, you start, you cause chaos on the defensive end of the floor like Lee said you do, and you be physical with that best wing and slow that guy down, and then we're going to hand the keys over to Trey Mann for a large portion of the game. And so you're going to see Josh Green in this sort of like 20-minute starter role and have Trey Mann be in a more minutes 6-man role.
Right. Well, and if he's a scorer, then you're taking the basketball out of Trey's hands, and you're limiting what Trey can do as a scorer to some degree, right? Because if he's out there with LaMelo, well, LaMelo's a better option. He's out there with Brandon, well, Brandon's a better option. You bring up Miles, even if you view them as, okay, go get a bucket, they're even, still, Miles is going to take the basketball away in some of those offensive possessions from Trey. Whereas if he goes to the bench and then you bring him in as the first guy, he gets minutes with the starters, and then the starters go to the bench. Now he's getting minutes with all the other guys on the pine. Now it's just cook, baby. Trey, get the skillet out. Let's cook and just beat up on these other twos that you'll be playing against in the NBA.
And how many times did we see the bench, which in all fairness was like ripped apart because they didn't have enough starters to like cross play starters and bench. A lot of times they were going to like 4 bench guys and 1 starter as opposed to 2 starters and 3 bench level players because everybody was injured. But we saw an anemic scoring bench for much of last season, unless Nick Richards was like going crazy 9 for 9 or something with 9 dunks. But Trey Mann offers you an opportunity to score in every aspect of the game. And, I know that 119 some of that was the second and third rotation for this team in the second half, but you can get those kind of numbers if you've got Trey Mann coming off the bench. Last thing I'll say on Trey Mann, you remember when like Clifford as coach would give us hints in media day and training camp about who was going to come out hot, and he would typically be right. Like he called the Nick Richards explosion before the Nick Richards explosion happened. Lee gave us no indication that I remember about Trey Mann doing this. This has come out of nowhere unless you've been watching Trey Mann. It makes me wonder if like Lee was trying to keep that under a bushel. And Trey Mann, he couldn't contain himself in preseason, but he didn't want to reveal the secret weapon that they have in Trey Mann now.
I think I've heard some stuff about Trey, maybe even more so from players. And Charles Lee might have talked about it a little bit, but maybe in the way where a coach wants to give everybody credit and he doesn't single out Trey Mann more so. Perhaps that was the case.
Well, Seth Curry mentioned, or someone mentioned on the broadcast that Seth Curry told Dell, hey, watch out for Trey Mann this year. But that was on preseason game number 2. Like we're already past, when you would reveal that kind of information, and just sort of backed up what we were seeing on the floor. I don't remember Lee ever going, whoa, this Trey Mann kid, watch out. Not that he was... Not that I'm not saying like he was denigrating Trey Mann or he was ignoring Trey Mann. It's just like he didn't really single out a lot of players. He was more team focused anyway, and we just had no idea this was coming. It's a glorious surprise.
Honestly, it was Josh Green. If he singled out anybody at training camp, he lauded Josh Green and saying he just didn't want to mess Josh up. So and who knows? But it's a beautiful problem. Look at these problems. Who are we? Who is this team? Oh baby. Positive vibes. Let's move on. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
All right, Brandon Miller, Stangin, Trey Mann, Stangin. Who else is Stangin and who is Clangin? We'll get to that in just a moment on Locked On Hornets. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL fans, NBA fans too. We're not going to leave you out. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. What's great is when you're watching a Hornets game, you see Trey Mann, he's 4-4 on twos, he's 4-4 overall on the field. Now it's like, all right, over, pound it. And then you can see the live play-by-play. As you're mashing the over button, you can see Trey continue to hit buckets. That's what we want to see. FanDuel.com. Again, FanDuel.com, America's #1 sports book. One more segment to go. LOH. No LaMelo to speak of here. Like the storylines, they've changed a little bit, Doug, in the sense that LaMelo didn't ball because he didn't play. Brandon Miller had a much better shooting stat. Trey Mann has been good every single preseason game. Tijan Salon, maybe we start there. Like, just, the guy that was the story after the first 2 preseason games. Stangin or Clangin, Doug, on the rookie in his 3rd preseason?
Man, you started with the hardest one, I think, because
I know.
He did it again, which is he was not looking great or not looking at all in the first half, and then in the second half against second string and then sometimes third string Memphis Grizzlies players. Although I don't know what the Grizzlies were doing. Like, they had Edie out there way too long. They were putting some starters out there where I was like, what are we doing here? Why are you playing these guys against the third stringers? But so Tijan Salon, 13 points, 5 rebounds, 1 assist. He was we'll give him 42% from the field, and from 3 he was 3 of 10. He was taking a lot of shots in the first half that I thought, that's not a very good shot. And some of them went in. I mean, the deep 3 that he hit, and then he took this like crazy, sidestep corner 3. The difficulty of shots that he's hitting, to me, again, is like one of those, you're looking for boxes to check to go, is this guy star potential? And hitting shots that you go, that guy should not have hit that shot, that's a check. He's doing that. Doesn't mean he's a star right now. So I'm kind of dancing as much as I can to try to avoid answering your question. I got to go with, he was a big part of why they won. So I guess you got to go preseason Stangin. That would have been a regular season Clangin game. That's a preseason Stangin game.
Yeah, I think I would lean more towards Stangin. If you go, if you go double digits and you're 5 of 12, I think, especially what we've seen from him.
He took the second. He took the second most shots of any. So it was Brandon Miller who took 13, and who else took 13? Somebody else took 13 shots. But he took Trey Mann.
12,
Trey Mann
right.
took 13. Tijan took 12, in similar minutes. But that's so funny.
Yeah. So if I had to choose, I'd go Stangin. Like that, I think that's what it is. I don't feel as good about it as I did the first 2 preseason games, but I'd go Stangin. Take us away. Who else do you want to go with?
All right, I'm gonna stick with these third stringers because second overall. Well, first of all, in game score, which is something that PivotFade.com has on their box score. I'm not sure that they created it, but game score very simply takes the good, subtracts the bad, and there you have the game score. And 3 of the top 5 guys for the Charlotte Hornets in game score in that game were players that were playing deep in the bench and led by Moussa Diabate, who had 10 points, 3 rebounds, 1 assist in 12 minutes, was 100% from the field, hit 2 free throws as well, 2 steals, and he drew a foul as well, and 6 fast break points for Moussa Diabate. He looks so good this preseason. Stangin, absolutely.
You know what's interesting? I mean, he's on a 2-way. So, it wasn't one of these guys that was in training camp. We don't know what to do with him. Is he going to get waived? I mean, he's just straight up on a 2-way contract, and it looks like he's perfect for that 2-way contract, Doug. So, Miles Bridges gave him a shout-out after the second preseason game and post-game availability for all the rebounds, a key block shot. So, Diabate's been pretty impressive.
Yeah, another Stangin goes to Keontae Johnson. Haven't seen much of him in the preseason until that game, but 7 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. And he was 2 of 4 from 2, 1 of 2 from 3. And I just thought he looked very physical. He's a very physical player, and the NBA is trending towards physicality. So I think keeping him around on the 2-way contract, having him available as a wing that can hit a few shots and just bump some guys can be important. So Stangin for Keontae Johnson as well.
You want to go with the Clangin? You want to go Micic and just take the low-hanging fruit?
I mean, yeah, the lowest hanging fruit, man. 4 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists, but 4 turnovers, -5 on the night. Just looked like he had no idea, no command of the offense. It was awful. There's just no other way to put it. I don't know what's happening. There's obviously something happening because this doesn't even. We came into this preseason going, well, if Vasa can do what he did last season and add a 3-point shot, he could be something. And the 3-point shot's not there, and everything else that we liked about Micic is gone. So I don't know what we're left with.
Well, I mean, yeah, there becomes a point where you're a detriment to your team out on the floor. Like, you might not be helping a whole lot, but you might not be hurting as well. You might just be the ultimate connector, Tony Snell, where you're not recording any stats. But he's recording a lot of turnovers. I mean, you're throwing the basketball to the other team, and it was just, right to him, especially when we go to this past game that they played against the Heat. Like, I don't know, same. I don't know if he's tired. I don't know if he played in the Olympics and rested and then kind of fell weirdly out of shape because he rested. So I don't know, but he's not playing like he did once he came over to Charlotte. It's not like he was amazing every game, but I would say he was good. like I liked what we saw from Micic last year, and not right now. So yeah, I mean, I tweeted it out, begging Trey Mann to take any and all of the minutes that might be reserved for Micic, and Trey is just taking it, in full steam ahead. So yeah, interesting backcourt debate / battle there. That's not so much a battle / debate anymore.
So I mentioned the guys that didn't play. LaMelo, who had his shoulder taped up in that game iced up against Miami, was on the bench. Didn't look like it was a big deal, and they don't have to reveal anything about injuries in preseason. And then Josh Green tweaked something non-contact very early in that Miami Heat game and didn't play much. Looked like both those guys got the night off. There may be some nicks and bruises there that we're not quite sure about, but nothing serious enough to report on. But I didn't talk about the guy that returned from injury, which was Grant Williams. But he gets a clanging in this one, too. 15 minutes, 1 point, 1 assist. The only Hornet with a negative game score at minus 1.6. But we're going to chalk this up. Grant, you're kind of getting back into the flow. You got to figure it out. We're going to see more from him in the next couple of games. Not really worried about it. Although I do have a Bill Simmons-y question on Grant Williams. Is Grant Williams good at defense? Joe, we don't have to have that conversation right now, but I don't know that he's like entirely good at defense. He's really good at like moving around and being available and trying to take charges and being physical. I'm not sure he's great at defense.
Post defense. So
yeah.
Grant Williams to me is one of these guys that gets leverage because he's so strong. He's a tree trunk, and because these big like 6'6", 6'7", 6'8" guys that are among the shorter players down in the post, they can get under your hip, so you can't generate any power as an offensive post-up player. So now it's hard to get any ground, and then you just stall those possessions out. That's what Grant is good at, getting under your hip, not allowing you to gain ground. And then also, like, if he is going to get rebounds, it's going to be because he boxes you out, and then he drives you out of the paint, even though we know that Grant's not a great rebounder. He's historically been a pretty terrible rebounder. So, like, yeah, decent question. It's when people were praising him last year, it was like, yeah, he deserves it. I don't know if this is the real Grant Williams going into next year, but I think that he's fine enough, right? Like, I don't think he's a detriment on defense until you start to have some like real quick outside guys that are all shooting, and yeah, I don't know. It gets tough then at that point. You got any more thoughts?
Well, I said I had something for Nick Richards. I mean, 4 points, 11 rebounds, was a very little factor on the offensive end, and just he's become a detriment on the defensive end of the floor in a way like Micic turning it over, in a way that I fundamentally did not expect. He's just out of position too often. He's had a chance here to not audition for the starting job. That's Mark's job. But like to say, hey, I'm solidly a back. I just hope no other teams are watching, because I think he still is a trade candidate. I hope they're not fine-tooth combing these preseason games. And I hope that Nick Richards looks back at the tape and gets better for the regular season, and this is just a blip, because defensively he's not been very good. Final Stangin for me is KJ Simpson, who we haven't, again, a guy that I don't know that we've seen a ton of, but I've liked a little bit of what we've seen. But 8 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists. Not great shooting numbers, 37.5%, but here's why he gets a Stangin. Because KJ Simpson, I think he's like 6'2". He hit a too small on Kawamura of the Memphis Grizzlies, which is like one of 4 guys that he could hit the too small on, because KJ's 6'2". He's not bigger than a lot of players in the NBA. He's bigger than Kawamura, and it was funny to see him hit the too small.
All right, that'll do it. That's your final. We'll end on a Stangin. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods. That includes YouTube. Make sure you check us out on Monday. We'll talk plenty more Hornets there and get you ready for all the positive vibes in store. We hope so, going into the next season. Doug Branson, Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. Me, Walker Mail, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.